97%, that is the astonishing share of Tuesday night's game in Toronto that the Indiana Fever spent ahead, while the Toronto Tempo held the lead for exactly 0%, not a single second, possession, or moment across the entire 40 minutes. And yet, despite controlling almost the entire contest, Indiana still found itself fighting through a frantic final 59 seconds that featured two clutch Marina Mabrey three-pointers and a crucial palming violation. That kind of game reveals far more about the Fever's current identity than a simple final score ever could, because beneath the surface, the statistics tell an even more surprising story. While cameras across Canada remained focused on the scoreboard in Toronto, another result was quietly developing out west, and that result changed Indiana's position in the standings by an entire seed line. The final on August 18, 2026, read Indiana 101, Toronto 95, giving the Fever their fifth consecutive victory and moving them to 24-12. Only minutes later, the Atlanta Dream completed their matchup against the defending champion Las Vegas Aces, defeating them 97-82 and dropping Aya Wilson's team to 24-13. That meant Indiana accomplished much more than simply winning on the road in a hostile environment. The Fever jumped past the Aces in the standings, claimed the third seed, and secured home court advantage in the opening round. Back in June, that kind of movement would have looked mathematically unrealistic. But before getting into the tiebreaker calculations and breaking the standings down seed by seed, there is one number worth remembering, a statistic that has nothing to do with scoring, has appeared throughout every game of this winning streak, and could ultimately become Indiana's biggest problem when October arrives. It is arguably the ugliest number on this roster. So if you want the actual receipts instead of recycled hot takes, hit the like button, leave a comment telling me whether you trust this Fever team in a best-of-3 series, and subscribe, because this seeding battle is about to become chaotic. Start with what happened on the court in Toronto, because the shooting numbers make the Tempo's performance look particularly painful. Indiana converted 52.9% of its field goal attempts, while Toronto managed only 39.1%. From beyond the arc, the Fever knocked down 11 of 25 attempts for an impressive 44%, while Toronto made 12 of 37 for 32%. Indiana came flying out of the gates, making 13 of its first 21 shots, a blistering 61.9%, and taking a 33-23 advantage after the opening quarter. Kelsey Mitchell alone accounted for 16 points during those first 12 minutes. The Fever's lead eventually reached 17, making the game appear, at least statistically, like a complete blowout. But the scoreboard never told the entire story. Indiana committed 17 turnovers compared with Toronto's 12, and every time the Fever seemed ready to pull away, the Tempo fought their way back into single digits. It became a frustrating cycle of building a lead, watching it disappear, building again, and collapsing again. Anyone watching live was probably reaching for an antacid by the fourth quarter. The final period made the situation even more dramatic. Indiana entered the fourth quarter holding a 12-point advantage and extended that margin to 14 when Sophie Cunningham calmly converted 3 free throws with 6:45 remaining. Then the Fever offense suddenly stalled. Toronto cut the deficit to 7 with less than 3 minutes left, putting genuine pressure on Indiana. With 1:25 remaining, Michaela Timpson came up with a crucial steal that created the opportunity for Cunningham to bury another three-pointer and restore a 10-point cushion. Cunningham finished a perfect 3 for 3 from long range and scored 13 points, once again proving why she has been Indiana's most reliable bench weapon throughout the season and why she continues to make the plays that matter most whenever a lead begins to disappear. But Toronto was not finished. Mabrey answered with back-to-back three-pointers, cutting Indiana's advantage to 97-93 with only 59 seconds remaining. Then came the palming call against Mabrey, followed by a foul on Kiki Rice that effectively eliminated Toronto's final serious opportunity to complete the comeback. Now comes the part that makes this victory so important, the seed-by-seed standings math. Minnesota sits at 29-7 and appears essentially unreachable for the top seed, while Golden State is 25-9 in second place. Indiana is now 24-12, followed by Las Vegas at 24-13 and Atlanta at 22-13, with Washington, New York, and Dallas packed closely behind them and battling for the remaining playoff positions. There is one major detail that many recaps fail to emphasize: Indiana has played only 36 games in the 44-game regular season, while Las Vegas has already played 37. In a standings race determined by winning percentage, having a game in hand can become incredibly valuable, because Indiana possesses an opportunity that the defending champions do not. The tiebreaker picture makes the situation even more intriguing. Indiana defeated Atlanta 95-9 in overtime on August 16, accomplishing two important things simultaneously. The Fever created additional breathing room over the Dream and preserved the season series tiebreaker instead of allowing Atlanta to gain that advantage. Against Las Vegas, however, the situation is far tighter. Indiana's 86-84 overtime defeat at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on August 6 remains exactly the kind of narrow two-point loss that could become decisive if the teams finish tied in September. That is why Indiana's simplest and safest route is to avoid the tiebreaker entirely. If the Fever can finish ahead of the Aces outright, there will be no need for calculators or complicated postseason formulas. But getting there will be anything but easy, because Indiana's schedule is now turning into a genuine stress test. The Fever are currently navigating a brutal 5 games in 8 days road trip, with 3 games still remaining: Dallas, sitting at 2016, on Thursday, the Liberty in Brooklyn on Saturday, and Chicago on Sunday. That means 3 contests in only 4 days while traveling through 3 different cities, all with a roster already depending heavily on a short rotation. Then the league pauses, with the regular season shutting down from August 31 through September 16 for the FIA World Cup. That creates an unusual situation in which the standings race effectively freezes in place, leaving whichever team occupies third when the music stops with more than 2 weeks to live with that position. No coach wants to spend an extended World Cup break staring at the 4th seed and wondering what could have been. Yet there is another twist to this entire story. The player driving Indiana's push toward the 3rd seed did not even finish Tuesday's game. Kelsey Mitchell exploded for 29 points before leaving late in the 3rd quarter, and head coach Stephanie White later explained that Mitchell had become overheated. Before exiting, however, Mitchell delivered an extraordinary burst, scoring 8 points within a single minute. More importantly, that performance extended her streak of games with at least 20 points to 20 consecutive contests, tying Aya Wilson for the longest such streak in WNBA history. Think about what that means. On the very night Indiana's primary offensive engine matched a record belonging to the 4-time MVP, Mitchell's team also moved past Wilson's team in the standings and seized control of the 3rd seed. Kelsey Mitchell is averaging 24.3 points per game this season, and she is producing the strongest basketball of her career at precisely the stage of the season when every performance carries maximum weight. But Tuesday night delivered more than one record-setting achievement. Caitlin Clark contributed 24 points and 7 assists, and when Clark and Mitchell both surpassed the 20-point mark in the same contest, they accomplished that feat for the 16th time this season, establishing a new WNBA record. The previous benchmark was 15 such games, achieved by Diana Taurasi and Cappie Pondexter with Phoenix back in 2008. Clark is currently leading Indiana with 8.3 assists per game, and on August 11 against New York, she recorded the 29th double-double of her career by finishing with 22 points and 10 assists. She was also selected as the AP Player of the Week for the 2nd time this season after producing averages of 25.7 points, 9.7 assists, and 3.3 rebounds while shooting 50.9% across 3 victories. That is far beyond what anyone could dismiss as simply a hot stretch. It is MVP-level production coming from a team that is scoring at a higher rate than anyone else in the league. There is also a storyline that the league office might prefer fans to overlook. On August 8, Clark received her 8th technical foul of the season, leaving her just 1 technical away from an automatic suspension. Almost immediately, the conversation shifted toward whether she was becoming too emotional, but Clark responded in the only way that ultimately matters, through her performance. In the very next game, she delivered 22 points and 10 assists as Indiana defeated the Liberty by 14 points. Competitive intensity only becomes a liability when the production fails to justify it, and in Clark's case, the statistics continue to support the fire. But beneath all those impressive scoring and playmaking numbers sits the weakness that almost everyone missed: the rebounding battle. Toronto dominated Indiana on the boards 41-32, meaning a team shooting only 39% from the field and carrying an 11-game losing streak with a 10-24 record still collected 9 more rebounds than the team currently holding the third seed. Toronto reserve Ana Marora was especially damaging, coming off the bench to grab 16 rebounds while adding 14 points. When a team misses that many shots yet remains within striking distance, offensive rebounds and second opportunities are usually the explanation, and that is exactly what happened. More concerning for Indiana is that this is not simply an isolated problem from one night. Rebounding has been the Fever's most vulnerable area throughout this winning streak, which helps explain why several of these victories have felt like trying to sprint while dragging a parachute behind you. The reason this weakness matters far more than Indiana's impressive shooting percentages is the opponent potentially waiting for them in October. Aya Wilson currently leads the WNBA in scoring at 25.9 points per game, tops the league in blocks at 2.1, and ranks third in rebounding at 9.7 per contest. Chelsea Gray continues to distribute at a 7-assist per game pace, while Jackie Young is contributing 18.7 points and 6.6 assists each night. Indiana's frontcourt depth has also suffered a major blow with Damiris Dantas ruled out for the season, leaving Aaliyah Boston to shoulder much of the interior responsibility. Boston is averaging 8.5 rebounds per game and scored 16 points in Toronto, but a 9-rebound disadvantage against a 10-win expansion team can become a series-ending problem when the opponent is Las Vegas. That is simply what the numbers say, regardless of how optimistic the mood may be. And that leads directly to Indiana's rotation dilemma. Lexi Hull has started 31 of her 34 appearances and is averaging 5.3 points and 3.1 rebounds, but her production has fallen even further over the past 5 games to approximately 3.6 points per night, and she finished the Toronto game with only 4 points and 6 rebounds. That is a significant decline from last season, when Hull supplied the Fever with 7.2 points per game while shooting 39.5% overall and 36.7% from three-point range. As the slump has continued, fan patience has understandably worn thin, and calls for a different starting lineup have grown louder. Still, there is a fair argument to make on Hull's behalf. Basketball is deeply connected to confidence, and she remains a genuinely valuable defender and cutter who appears trapped in the kind of offensive slump where every shot seems to hit an invisible lid around the rim. That can be corrected, but confidence cannot be repaired instantly, and Indiana is running out of time. On the other hand, Sophie Cunningham has provided a steady offensive spark, averaging 8.8 points primarily as a reserve across 33 games while shooting from 3 at an elite rate. She just demonstrated that value again by going a perfect 3 for 3 from beyond the arc in the very game that helped Indiana take control of the third seed. Head coach Stephanie White has already begun testing different combinations, including 3-guard lineups in consecutive games and meaningful minutes for rookie Raven Johnson. That raises an intriguing possibility. Perhaps Indiana's rebounding and spacing issues do not require a trade or new signing at all. Maybe the simplest adjustment would be moving Cunningham into the starting lineup and allowing the bench scoring responsibilities to reorganize behind her. The film suggests Indiana's offense becomes more fluid when Cunningham shares the floor with Clark and Mitchell, while the statistics indicate that her three-point efficiency ranks among the best on the roster outside the team's 3 primary stars. Eventually, when enough evidence points in the same direction, the data stops being merely a suggestion. So where does all of this leave Indiana? The Fever have 8 regular season games remaining, possess a game in hand over Las Vegas, currently hold home court advantage in the first round, have the league's hottest scoring guard, a healthy Caitlin Clark playing the most consistently impressive basketball of her career, and a 5-game winning streak built largely on the road. Taken together, that is the profile of a legitimate contender. Indiana has also answered the major question that followed them throughout the summer: could this team actually defeat strong opponents? They beat Atlanta, and then Atlanta immediately helped Indiana's cause by taking down Las Vegas. From here, the potential ceiling is higher than it has been at any point since this core was assembled. But there is one major obstacle between the Fever and a genuine playoff run, and that obstacle is the glass. Everyone in that locker room understands it. If Indiana fixes its rebounding, protects the third seed through the World Cup break, and maintains this level of production, the Fever could become the most dangerous first-round opponent in the entire bracket. If they fail to address it, the same 9-board gap that allowed a 10-win Toronto team to remain dangerously close during those final 59 seconds could appear again in a playoff series, except in October, there will be no extra clock left to save them. So now the question goes to you, is Indiana's third seed truly sustainable, or will Las Vegas reclaim it before the season pauses? Leave your prediction in the comments, hit the like button if you want more stat-driven breakdowns instead of recycled headlines, and subscribe because the final 8 games of this regular season are about to determine everything.